Hello, this is Katie and today we're going to be making some earrings. So in this tutorial we're going to make this really simple earrings, but they're really effective and great for the spring and summer. So you can make them with nuggets and also with beads as well, or anything. It's a great one for using up all the kind of end of strands and things and making some nice mismatched jewellery as well. So what we're going to use is some 0.8mm wire, that is the UK term. The American wire gauge term is 20 gauge wire, so it's a 0.8mm or 20 gauge wire, and you're going to need two pieces of 15cm length, which is 6 inches. I've already made one up, so I'm going to make the opposite one as well. You're going to need a head pin, or you can make your own head pin. The length of the head pin will totally depend on how much you want that drop to be. So this is the one we're going to make. I've used 3 beads on mine, so it will the length of the head pin can be any length head pin for the design that you want to put with the beads that you're using. And we're also going to need a jump ring. So the jump ring I'm using is a 5mm ID. So ID is inner diameter, so it's the distance between the sort of right across the center on the inside, the inner diameter, and I'm using a 5mm one. So, and that jump ring is going in the middle of a little spiral and onto our wrapped loop from the dangle part. And the ear wire, so the part that actually goes through the ear, is all integrated into the design. So what else are we going to need? We're going to need some tools. So we're going to use some chain nose pliers. We're going to need 2 because we're going to be opening and closing a jump ring. So I've got 2 pairs of different chain nose pliers. I've got my flush cutters, and I've also got some round nose pliers. And to form the ear wire, this little bump that goes through the ear, I'm using some 6-step bail making pliers. Now if you haven't got those, you can just use a chunky pen, sort of this type of chunky pen. It's just to wrap around, but I'm sure you will have something available. We're also going to be hammering a little bit, so just for today I'm just using my small mini anvil. These are absolutely fantastic if you do any sort of wire work. Having the mini anvil is great because you've got lots and lots of different angles on there. And a hammer, so I'm using my 8-ounce ball peen hammer. So I will list everything underneath the video, just down below. If you just click more, you'll be able to see everything that I've used. And if it's something that I can link to where you could purchase them, I will do that also. If I haven't linked it, it means just do a search and you'll be absolutely fine finding what you need. So we're going to go ahead and make the other one of these. So I'm just going to move these ones out of the way for 2 seconds. Just make myself a little bit of space. So we're going to start off with making the actual spiral. So I've got, like I said, it's an 8mm gauge wire in the UK, 20 gauge in the US, and I've got 15cm, which is 6 inches. So we're going to go ahead and use our round nose pliers right at the very tip. So we're going to hold on right at the very tip there, making sure we can't really feel it on this side of the pliers. That means you've got it as far down as you can possibly get it. And we're going to start turning. So I'm just using my wrist to turn. I'll turn as far as I can go. And I don't know whether you can see that there. The very tip, that little bit that we first grabbed in between the pliers, is a little bit straighter. The rest of it is nice and round. So what I always do when I'm making any sort of spiral is once I've just made that first turn, I'll just snip off just that little bit. It's only a tiny bit, it's just there. It's very, very tiny. And that will make it so we're actually turning that on an angle now. So we're not turning a straight piece of wire. So just for the internal part of this spiral, we want that little piece to meet. Okay, so we've kind of got this P or 9 shape, whichever way you're holding it. Now what we're going to do is we're going to go in with our pliers, and we just want to guide it around. We don't want to make a spiral so it actually sits right next to it, but we want to guide it around. So I'm just making little moves. Just move it around to wherever is comfortable for you. and we just want to leave that little gap. We see we've got that little gap in between. Okay, you probably only get to about here, and then it gets a little bit difficult with your round nose pliers. So we're going to swap over to some chain nose pliers. I'm just going to give that a little clamp down, just make sure everything's nice and flat. So we're keeping that little gap in between. We don't want it to be neat and close up. We're just going to grabbing and moving a little bit. Now I always grab, I never kind of grab with this part of my pliers. This hasn't got enough strength. I want to grab further down. I want to go with the side of the pliers and just moving a little bit at a time, just winding that round so we've got that open spiral look. Now I would suggest making your pair of earrings in tandem. So do one spiral, then do the other, and then you're able to kind of pop them next to each other and assess them and see if they're the same size. So mine may not be exactly the same size today, but it doesn't matter. So I'm just keeping that spiral nice and open, and I'm almost happy with that. It's going to splay out a bit because this one's been hammered, the one that I've already done, and I'm happy with that about there. So we don't want a huge distance between the center spiral and the bottom. Okay, so if it looks like there's going to be a big difference, I want my actual jump ring to go across here. So I'm actually going to open that out a little bit there. I'm more happy with that now. It'll make more sense when we actually put that jump ring in at the end. So now I've got my spiral, I'm going to pop my pliers in quite a way down in it. I'm using a stronger part of the pliers down here. I'm holding that spiral and I'm just redirecting that wire so it's more coming away from the spiral. So if we hold it this way, it's more of a lollipop. Okay, so I'm happy with how this is all sitting. It's going to splay out a little bit like this one is because we're going to hammer it now. So I'm going to take my little mini anvil, put my wire nice and flat onto here, and I'm going to use the flat side of my hammer, and I'm going to tap it down. We're just going to work harden it and make it splay out that little bit. Now I'm always holding my hammer right at the end of the hammer and using the weight of the hammer to drop down onto the metal. Now I won't talk while I'm doing this because you won't be able to hear me anyway, and I will probably mute the video just because you don't want to hear lots of banging. But you'll see the motion of tapping it, checking it, looking at it, turning it over, and just assessing it until we've got a similar look to the one that we've already made. Okay, I'm happy with that. You can see how the light reflects off that differently now. It's got that flattened, more hammered look, and I'm happy with how that's sitting. I just made sure that I'm just offering it up to the other one and just making sure we've got a very similar look. I'm just going to, just with my finer chain nose pliers, see how this was just splayed out a little bit more there than I wanted it to. Let's just grab in there and just pull that in very, very slightly. There, I'm happy with that now. Okay, so this part, we've done the hammering for that part. What we need to do now is choose a bead for it, because we've got actually a bead up here on the actually ear wire design. So in mine, I've chosen lapis lazuli gemstones, but I've got two different types. I've got one that's a polished and one that's a matte. So I'm putting the matte one onto the actual design for this part. Now what I want to do is make sure I do them in opposite to each other, because we don't want two ear wires the same way around, so we want them to sit opposite. So I know from looking at that, this wire is going to come forwards, so I need to make sure they are sat nicely opposite each other, and I need to push this wire forwards on this one so I know which is the front. And I'm just going to pinch this all together, holding everything nice and firmly. You can't use your pliers really for this bit, you just need to hold everything nice and firm and push it forward a little bit, because if you put your pliers in there, you're going to create a distance. We want to kind of lock this gemstone in. So let's pop those out of the way. So I've just pushed that forward a little bit. It's about, if we take a look at that, it's about a 45-degree angle. Now this is where we're going to use our 6-step bail making pliers. Now I'm going to use it on the largest step, so just double check that that's what I used. I used it on the second to largest step, so I'm going to use this one. Now I want the size of the mandrel that I want to be on the opposite side, so this is going to come around. I know this is the front of my design, so my ear wire is going to go around and across the other side. If you haven't got the bail making pliers and you are going to use that pen technique, all you're going to do is hold it exactly the same, like so, and then push it around. I'm going to use the 6-step bail making pliers because I've used that for the opposite one, but it is just as simple as holding and then pushing it around. It's a little bit fiddlier, but you will get there. So I'm going to pop my pliers in, just like I said, and I'm going around this bottom mandrel and I'm pushing it all the way to the opposite side until it gets down and becomes more parallel with the rest of the design. Okay, now again, this is another thing you should do in tandem with each other. It is a little bit harder because we've got a bead on here, but what I want to do is level these up so I make sure that the ends are cut exactly the same. So it is harder because you've kind of got to get these level, and the bead kind of does get in the way a little bit. But now I know that that's the right length I want, I can take my flush cutters and making sure you cut it flush side closest to your design. So the flush side of your pliers is the side that is flat, so that side needs to be closest to your design, so that's the side you leave. And then I've got that length and I can just pop a little kink in like so, so it matches the other opposite side. Now the other thing that I do when I make my own ear wires is I use a file. So let me just grab my file. There it is. Now you can use professional jewellery making files. I tend to just use really basic emery boards for jobs like this. If you were doing a much bigger job, you would use a professional file, but just a basic emery board or nail file, and just really work around. And what you're trying to do is round that end. So just spend a little bit more time than I'm doing here. I will finish it off better a little bit later, but just spend a little bit of time just making sure it's not sharp at the end. It's not actually going to hurt anybody, because that's going to go through your ear. So we've got the top part of our earring made. We've got our jump ring to one side standing by. We just need to make the bottom drop. So we're just going to be making a drop using a standard head pin. So it's a standard head pin with a ball on the end. You can use anything you like, it's your design. I've got my lapis lazuli gemstones here, so, and I've got 2 of the polished and 1 of the matte, so I'm going to put them on. So a polished, a matte, and then a polished, just so it gives you a little bit of difference in your design. It's all about interpretation of your own design and what you want to do. Now I know that when I made this one, I popped my pliers in a few millimeters down, so it's making sure you're doing things at the same distances on both designs. So I've popped my chain nose pliers, these are very fine chain nose pliers, a few millimeters down on my pliers, and then I'm gonna, if I turn this way, I'm gonna push that away and create a right angle. Then I can take my chain nose pliers out. I can move over to my round nose pliers and take that a few millimeters down on my round nose pliers. So making sure you're using on your pliers the same parts of the pliers each time. And I'm just going to push this all the way around until it becomes parallel again. Then I'm going to reposition my pliers. I'm not taking my pliers out, I'm just repositioning them so that I've got a little bit more room to maneuver. You'll see your beads will move because we've got that little gap, but that little gap is the part that we're going to fill with our wraps. So you're going to go over or under, it's entirely up to you, and pass that all the way over so it's coming out at a right angle, that little tail. And then we're going to take our pliers out. A lot of people do tend to leave their round nose pliers in and do these wraps, but trust me, trust the process. You will get a better result if you take those out and hold that loop with your chain nose pliers. You'll retain the shape a lot better and you'll end up with a lot better finish. So we're just going to very slowly and carefully create our wraps. Now we want our wraps to match the opposite side, and if you've used, remember when we first put our chain nose pliers in, if you've used the same part of your pliers, you will have the same distance to fill and you will get your matching wraps. So nice and tightly filled in there. Again, I'm going to use the flush side of my pliers just to snip that off and then just give that little squish, making sure any ends are tucked in, and you will have a perfect wrapped loop. So usually if you go about 3 millimeters or so down on your pliers, you will fill that gap in perfectly with 3 wraps every time. It does take time and practice getting that right, but once you know the part of your pliers you need to use, it will work out perfectly every time. So now all we've got to do is put everything together. So we've got our drop, we've got our earring, and now we need to use our jump ring to join everything together. So I'm going to use 2 pairs of chain nose pliers. Just move a few things out of my way. So, and what I want to do is open a jump ring. So the basic thing of opening a jump ring is finding where that cut is. So you really want to buy jump rings which are saw cuts, because they are the most perfectly cut and they will open and close the best. So you can just see where that opening is. So what I want to do is I want to hold one side nice and firmly. So with my less dominant hand, which is my left hand, I've held that across the actual jump ring. Now I'm going to use the tip of the chain nose pliers at the other side, and this is the way to open a jump ring. You're just going to make that little twist. Okay, we don't open them outwards, you open it like you're opening a door or a door handle. It's that twist. Okay, so we've got that open, and now we can add onto our design. So what we want to do, we want to go through that middle, the center of that loop. So find the center. So we've actually gone through the center, and then you're coming over the rest of the design, and then you want to pop on your dangle part or your wrapped loop. And again, we're going to hold that with the less dominant side. We're going to hold across the jump ring and just gently close, and I tend to just give it a little wiggle and make sure it is as closed up as it can possibly be, so it looks like it did right at the beginning. And now our earring is finished, so we should have a nice perfect pair like so. Like I say, if you want them to be absolutely perfect, make them in tandem. So once you've done one spiral, do the other spiral. Once you've created one loop, create the opposite loop, and just do everything in tandem, one after the other, and you will create really beautiful pairs of earrings. These are amazing summer designs, and like I say, they're brilliant for using up beads. The other pair that I've made, these are using up some of the chips and nuggets that I've used in a project recently. I think they just look really nice. They work really well. They've got that extra kind of dimension. Rather than it just being a drop, you've got that spiral and that extra little bit of movement in there. So thank you very much for watching. It's been nice to bring you another tutorial. I do have lots and lots planned. I know I haven't done as many lately, but I am on it now, and I will be back with lots of new designs very soon. If you haven't subscribed already, please subscribe. I really do appreciate it, and I will see you again very soon. Thank you.